George Clooney is almost too good to be true.
I'm not the guy that you killed.
I can understand why he makes all those lists.
Gotta settle down, have a couple of kids.
Until at the age of 33, the big break came as Dr. Doug Ross in the medical drama ER.
While filming The Last Frontier in Times Square, George Clooney faced an unexpected confrontation. A man named Leo Martinez burst into the set, loudly criticizing Clooney for his public role. Some days later,
It's really fun. I mean, all of it. The AFI is really it's a great sort of event in general. And they do really important things for young filmmakers in particular.
another protester challenged him about the movie's portrayal of violence. Each incident caught the attention of onlookers, putting Clooney in a spotlight he didn't expect. So, how did Clooney react to the two situations? In this video, we will reveal how George Clooney was confronted and what happened after. The controversial nature of George Clooney. George Clooney is one of those names in Hollywood that draws interest wherever he goes. He's not just famous for his acting skills, he's a bit of a controversial figure too. People love him, question him, and get curious about who he really is behind the camera. Clooney has a reputation for playing complex and realistic characters who are far from perfect. This has always made fans wonder if there's a part of him that's similar to these roles. Is George just like the characters he plays? Or is he just really talented at playing these intense roles? These are questions people have asked for years, since he keeps choosing characters that make you feel like he has a separate identity from what he portrays.
Then you go, wait, my best friend's George Clooney.
Yeah, come on,
I better
man.
tune in a little bit, but then you just can't.
Couldn't.
You'll find out more about this in the course of this video. Stay tuned till the end. Looking back, Clooney didn't just go into Hollywood as the big star he is now. His journey began with small roles on TV, bit parts here and there. But things really started to change for him when he starred in the medical drama ER as Dr. Doug Ross. That role transformed him from a guy getting by in the industry to a household name. The world quickly noticed Clooney's mix of charm and intensity, making him someone people couldn't look away from. After ER, he made the leap to the big screen and never looked back. Clooney's debut movie role wasn't exactly glamorous, though. He first appeared in films like Return of the Killer Tomatoes, a comedy that probably didn't prepare anyone for the serious roles he'd take on later. But as he moved on, he got roles that were more intense and challenging. One of his big hits was From Dusk Till Dawn, where he played a tough, unpredictable character. It was one of those roles that made people raise their eyebrows and go, "Is this really the same guy we saw on ER?" But that role showcased his range, proving he wasn't just the TV doctor everyone knew him as. Over the years, Clooney's choice of roles has continued to stir things up. One memorable role that got attention was in Syriana, where he played a CIA operative entangled in the messy world of oil politics. Clooney didn't just play the part, he completely immersed himself in it.
Thank you. I feel really sort of well. I feel well.
Yeah, you're fit. You got the new hair face
Oh,
thing going
sure.
on.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
proud of that. It took
It's-
me a year to grow.
It did?
Yeah.
It's very striking.
Boy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You look nice, too. I like this.
Do you know what? I wore this when I met Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Even gaining weight to look more authentic. It was a role that took a toll on him physically and mentally, and the public had mixed reactions. Some praised his dedication and realism, while others questioned if the role was pushing things too far. Either way, it got people talking. Fast forward to now, Clooney is back in the spotlight with a new movie, The Last Frontier, a highly anticipated thriller directed by Martin Crowe, known for his intense, action-packed films. Clooney stars as Detective Miles Harper, a retired cop who's pulled back into a world of crime he thought he'd left behind. Harper is not your typical hero. He's got a dark past and a lot of emotional baggage, which makes him a character that's both complex and relatable in a raw, gritty way. Fans are excited because they know Clooney has a knack for these kinds of roles, where the character isn't all good or bad, but somewhere in between. The movie is set in none other than New York City, the city that never sleeps, which adds a whole new layer of intensity to the film. Shooting a movie in New York is no small feat, especially with high-stakes action scenes happening in crowded, iconic locations like Times Square, Central Park, and Wall Street. Managing a production like this in the middle of New York is challenging. Imagine trying to film a car chase in Times Square without getting the whole place shut down. Locals and tourists are always stopping to watch, and it's hard to keep things under wraps. The crew has to be extra cautious about keeping things on schedule, especially since securing filming permits for these locations isn't easy. Clooney's role in The Last Frontier isn't just another detective. Detective Harper is someone who's been through a lot, and Clooney went all in to make that come across on screen.
Anybody, all the machinations that got us there, that's all, none of that's going to be remembered. And it shouldn't be. What should be remembered is the selfless act of someone who, it's very hard to let go of power.
He went through intense preparation to get into character, including training for the physical side of things and diving deep into Harper's backstory. Fans love seeing this side of Clooney because it shows how seriously he takes his craft. He's not just reading lines, he's becoming this troubled detective, adding layers to the role that make Harper feel like a real person. The production timeline for this movie has been no walk in the park either. Filming kicked off in March 2024 and is expected to wrap up by September, which is pretty fast for a movie of this scale. But with a project this big, things are bound to get complicated. New York's unpredictable weather is one challenge. One day it's sunny, the next it's pouring, which can mess with a tight shooting schedule. And then there's the issue of keeping the public interest at bay. With such a high-profile shoot, fans and media outlets are always hovering, trying to catch a glimpse or snap a picture. The production team has to work around these obstacles while staying on track. Public interest in The Last Frontier has been through the roof, partly because of Clooney's star power, but also because of the other big names attached to the project. Emily Blunt and Idris Elba are co-starring, which only adds to the excitement. Fans are eager for any updates, and social media is buzzing with speculation about plot twists, character dynamics, and behind-the-scenes drama. Whenever new details about the film surface, whether it's a leaked set photo or a cast member hinting at something, the internet lights up with excitement. Fans are hanging on every word and every image, hoping for clues about how the story will unfold. What makes this movie particularly interesting for Clooney fans is the contrast between Clooney's usual roles and what he's doing with Detective Harper. Some people see Harper as a classic Clooney character who is a flawed but ultimately good guy trying to make things right. Others feel like it's a stretch, wondering if Clooney can really pull off this darker, more conflicted role without slipping back into the usual cool guy persona. But that's what makes Clooney so compelling. People are constantly debating if he's perfect for these intense roles, or if he's just taking on too much. For his part, Clooney seems unbothered about public opinion. He's all about pushing his boundaries and keeping audiences guessing. So, the ultimate question is whether Clooney choosing to ignore the opinions of the public promoted the attack from Martinez. Leo Martinez confronts George Clooney. The confrontation incident involving George Clooney was one of those moments no one expected, yet everyone couldn't stop talking about once it happened. The buzz around Clooney's latest movie, The Last Frontier, was already high, with its high-energy scenes being shot across New York City's busiest areas. Clooney, playing Detective Moses Harper, was set to tackle a demanding role that would challenge both his acting skills and his ability to handle complex stunts. On this day in May 2024, the crew was in Times Square for a high-stakes action scene, with Clooney in full costume, ready to dive into his role as a detective with a dark past. As usual with a big action scene, the area was surrounded by security.
An invitation that never went out because a damn party got canceled. You are not supposed to do anything.
With roads closed off and large crowds watching from behind barriers. Clooney was in character, fully focused on his part, when suddenly a man managed to slip past the security and head straight for him. The crew quickly noticed, and the scene came to a stop as this unexpected figure moved toward Clooney. The man's name was Leo Martinez, a former fan of Clooney's, though now he was known more for his vocal criticisms of Hollywood, particularly certain stars and their choice of roles. Martinez wasn't just an ordinary fan. He was a well-known blogger who had written numerous pieces accusing certain actors of depicting particular groups unfairly in films. And he had a lot to say about Clooney. Leo had been critical of Clooney for years, feeling that some of his roles were responsible for putting specific communities and groups in a bad light. He believed Clooney's choice of characters often painted certain people in a negative way, and that, as a public figure, Clooney had a responsibility to choose roles that didn't promote harmful stereotypes. Leo's blog was filled with opinion pieces where he called out Clooney and others. But this time, he wasn't content with just writing. He wanted to confront Clooney face-to-face, right there on set. As Leo approached, he began shouting accusations at Clooney, calling him out for portraying roles that, in his view, were damaging to certain groups. His voice was loud enough to be heard over the surrounding noise of Times Square, capturing the attention of everyone around. People turned to watch as Leo's words echoed across the area, and Clooney, clearly caught off guard, stood still, listening to what Leo had to say. The crew members tried to stop Leo, but he was determined, walking closer to Clooney as he continued voicing his complaints. Leo didn't hold back, claiming that Clooney's recent roles, including his character in The Last Frontier, were contributing to stereotypes that harmed specific communities. He accused Clooney of taking on roles that painted certain people as villains or morally flawed characters, insisting that this was irresponsible. Leo's words grew more intense as he called Clooney out for, in his opinion, failing to consider the impact of his work on these communities. The whole scene was tense, with onlookers stunned into silence, unsure how Clooney would respond to this sudden outburst. Despite the confrontation and the growing attention from the crowd, Clooney maintained his calm. Instead of reacting with anger or brushing off the criticism, he paused and listened to Leo's words. Clooney had been in Hollywood long enough to know how quickly things could escalate, especially when there were cameras rolling from every angle. After letting Leo speak his mind, Clooney responded in a calm, composed tone. He acknowledged Leo's concerns, explaining that he understood the power of film and the way roles could influence perceptions. He shared that he always aimed to approach his roles with respect and never intended to harm any group through his work. Clooney assured Leo that he appreciated constructive criticism and offered to have a more detailed conversation with him after the shoot, hoping to address his concerns away from the crowd and media attention. But Leo didn't seem satisfied with Clooney's response. He continued to press, arguing that actors like Clooney had a unique responsibility to choose roles that didn't negatively affect certain groups. Security soon intervened, gently guiding Leo away from the set, though his accusations lingered in the air, leaving everyone watching to wonder what had just happened. The incident quickly went viral. News outlets ran the story, and social media lit up with clips of the confrontation. Fans and followers everywhere shared their opinions, with many praising Clooney's calm and respectful handling of the situation. People admired that Clooney hadn't lost his cool or ignored the criticism, but had instead tried to engage with Leo in a respectful way. His calm response won him praise, especially in the face of such a public confrontation. Yet, as the story spread, opinions were mixed. Some people felt that Leo had a valid point, agreeing that actors do have a certain responsibility when it comes to the roles they choose and the messages they might send. They believed that someone with Clooney's influence should be extra careful about the impact his roles might have on public perception. Others argued that actors shouldn't have to bear that kind of burden, that their job is to entertain, not to censor their choices to fit a particular narrative. They felt that Clooney's role choices were his own, and that he should be free to explore different characters without being called out in this way. There was also a lot of discussion about security on the set, and how someone like Leo was able to get through. Some felt that the production's security should have been tighter, especially with such a high-profile scene being filmed in a busy area. People argued that this kind of interruption shouldn't have been allowed to happen, as it could have posed a risk to the cast and crew. But others saw the incident as a reminder of the unique pressure that public figures face, especially those like Clooney, who often take on challenging roles that might spark strong reactions. Throughout all the online debates and media coverage that day, Clooney stayed focused on his work. Those who knew Clooney weren't surprised by his calm response, or by how quickly he returned to his role. Over the years, Clooney had built a reputation for handling tough situations with composure, and this was no different. Activist confronts Clooney about violence on screen.
First of all, what we see, and we've learned over the, all of these genocides, is that almost always what happens is not, it's people preying on conflicts that have existed for years.
Leo's confrontation against Clooney motivated another person to speak up just a few days later when Clooney returned to the set. This time, filming took place near Central Park, where the production team hoped for a smooth day. The weather was nice, and the crew was in good spirits, ready to tackle another intense scene. However, the calm atmosphere was soon disrupted when a woman named Sarah James made her way toward Clooney, holding a sign that read, "Stop the violence on screen." Sarah, a local activist, felt strongly about the film industry's portrayal of violence. She believed that movies, particularly those with high levels of action and aggression, contributed to real-life issues like societal aggression and desensitization to violence. As Clooney prepared to dive into an emotional scene, Sarah approached him, and it was clear she had something important to say. She had been inspired by the buzz surrounding the recent confrontation and wanted to voice her concerns directly to Clooney. As Sarah got closer, she began expressing her grievances loudly. Her accusations echoed through the park, claiming that actors like Clooney had a responsibility to be mindful of the impact their films could have on the public. She argued that violent movies glorified aggression and that, as a prominent figure in Hollywood, Clooney should choose roles that reflected more positive messages.
Listen, no one wants to hear me talk about being unfair, right? Because I've had a very lucky career.
The scene paused as the crew and onlookers turned to see what was happening. Some people seemed curious, while others appeared uncomfortable, caught off guard by this second confrontation. Initially surprised, Clooney paused in the middle of his scene, listening to Sarah's concerns. He looked thoughtful, trying to process her words as she continued to raise her voice about the negative effects of violence in movies. After a moment, Clooney stepped aside from the filming area, signaling to his team to give them space. He wanted to hear her out, but she was not in for any explanations. Unlike in his previous confrontation with Leo, Sarah wasn't interested in hearing Clooney's perspective. She stood firm, clutching her sign tightly, her voice rising as she repeated her accusations about Hollywood's glorification of violence. It was clear she had come prepared for a fight, and her intensity caught many off guard. Clooney tried to engage her, explaining that filmmakers often aim to provoke thought rather than simply glorify aggression. But Sarah wasn't having it. The atmosphere shifted from curiosity to tension, and everyone gathered at the scene looked concerned about what she could do to Clooney. Sarah shouted louder. A few of the crew members exchanged worried glances, unsure of what might happen next. In an attempt to regain control of the situation, the production's security team moved in. They approached Sarah gently at first, asking her to calm down and step back. But she refused, her voice piercing the air as she continued to shout about the dangers of violent media. Clooney's patience began to wear thin as he watched the unfolding scene. He wanted to keep the peace, but felt frustrated that their conversation couldn't take a more constructive turn. As security tried to reason with her, it became clear that she wasn't willing to budge. The tension reached a breaking point when Sarah, still holding her sign, pushed back against the guards. She insisted that her message was important and that it was vital for Clooney to hear it. Her fierce determination only fueled the situation, and the crew members looked on, unsure of how to intervene without making matters worse. Finally, when it became evident that the situation could turn chaotic, security took a firmer stance. They gently but firmly removed Sarah from the scene, her protests echoing in the air as she was escorted away. Clooney watched, a mix of frustration and sympathy on his face. He felt for her passion, but also knew that the method of her delivery wasn't conducive to meaningful dialogue. The media soon caught wind of the incident, and it quickly became a trending topic. News outlets reported on the confrontation, while social media erupted with reactions. Some users supported Sarah's message, agreeing that the film industry should take a closer look at how it portrays violence. Others defended Clooney's artistic choices, praising him for his willingness to listen and engage in tough conversations. This back and forth raised intense discussions online, with opinions flying in all directions. The day's events led many to reflect on past moments in Clooney's career, where he faced similar confrontations. Just a few years earlier, in 2022, Clooney had been challenged by a fan during a public event regarding his political statements. Instead of brushing the fan off, Clooney engaged in a candid discussion.
George Clooney went from Fox to smitten kitten during his stirring Golden Globe speech,
which caught the attention of the media and showcased his willingness to confront uncomfortable topics. That incident had shown that he was open to dialogue, and now this confrontation with Sarah only added to that narrative. In 2018, during an environmental conference, Clooney had faced another round of critiques from activists. They confronted him about the film industry's impact on environmental issues, and the discussion quickly became heated. However, Clooney managed to steer the conversation back toward his charitable efforts and investments in green technology. He effectively highlighted the positive work he was doing while addressing their concerns, which earned him respect among many advocates. At a charity gala in 2021, Clooney found himself facing yet another disruption. An audience member stood up and raised concerns about Hollywood's influence on public opinion, echoing sentiments similar to those of Sarah. Instead of dismissing the moment, Clooney took it as an opportunity to advocate for the industry's potential to raise awareness of global issues. He spoke passionately about the role of filmmakers in shaping societal views, reminding the audience that stories can inspire change and bring attention to important matters. All of these incidents contributed to Clooney's evolving reputation. People began to see him as a public figure open to dialogue, someone who was not afraid to confront critics or listen to differing opinions. This made him seem approachable and grounded, qualities that endeared him to many fans. He had become more than just an actor. He was seen as someone willing to engage in the messy complexities of public discourse, even if it meant facing difficult conversations. While not everyone agreed with Clooney's views or the roles he chose, his ability to respond thoughtfully to confrontations helped solidify his image as a celebrity who values public dialogue.
We have a problem in our industry with diversity, particularly not as much in front of the camera, honestly, we're getting better at that, but behind the camera.
Some might criticize him for the characters he plays or the films he makes, but his responses to these situations often shifted the focus from the roles themselves to broader discussions about responsibility in filmmaking. As the buzz from Sarah's confrontation continued, Clooney resumed filming with a renewed sense of purpose. He recognized that these encounters were part of his journey as an actor and public figure. He didn't shy away from the conversations, instead using them to reflect on his choices and the stories he wanted to tell. Each incident brought new challenges, but they also opened doors for discussions that could lead to change. What are your thoughts on Clooney's reaction to the confrontations? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click on the next video displayed on your screen. You will enjoy it.